A woman is recovering tonight after getting stuck in a cave in East County for more than 16 hours. According to the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, the 29-year-old woman got stuck trying to move.
On October 21st, 2023, a 29-year-old woman entered Thunder Canyon Cave, California with some friends. But as she squeezed through a narrow, jagged gap only 12 inches wide, her body suddenly became stuck. Her chest compressed, her arms pinned, and her helmet scraped against the stone. She had no room to turn and no way to free herself as the cold, damp air bit at her skin. Her friends tried desperately to pull her out, but the rock held her like a vice. Hours passed as her strength soon began to fade. After over 10 painful hours, the question on everyone's mind was, would she make it out alive? Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe for more chilling stories of survival and tragedy. Thunder Canyon Cave is not a place for the faint of heart. Hidden deep in East County, California, just off McCain Valley Road, this maze of boulders and tight crevices has challenged even the most experienced explorers. The passages twist and turn, some barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. There are no smooth tunnels, only jagged rock, unstable footing, and spaces so narrow that even the slightest miscalculation can mean getting wedged between unyielding stone. On October 21st, 2023, a 29-year-old woman set out to explore the cave with her friends. It was supposed to be an adventure, a day of crawling through tunnels, navigating dark corridors, and feeling the thrill of the underground world. But deep inside, where the walls closed in and the air grew thin, something went terribly wrong. The entrance is unremarkable, just a gap between boulders leading into darkness. Inside, the temperature drops sharply, the air is damp, and the walls cold. Some passages are wide enough to stand in, but others force explorers onto their stomachs, inching forward in suffocatingly tight spaces. The group moved cautiously through Thunder Canyon Cave, their headlamps flickering against the rocky walls. They have been exploring for hours, crawling through tight openings, squeezing through narrow cracks, and marveling at the beauty around them. But deep inside the cave, they reached a passage unlike any they had seen before. A narrow gap, only 12 inches wide. Just enough space for a body to pass through, but only if done carefully. The woman, eager to push forward, went first. She exhaled deeply, flattening herself against the cold rock. With slow, deliberate movements, she slid forward, inch by inch. The walls pressed in on either side, scraping against her gear, forcing her to turn her head sideways just a fit. The others watched as she disappeared into the darkness, her breathing loud in the confined space. Then she stopped. Her hips had wedged into the tightest part of the passage. She tried to adjust, twisting slightly, but it only made things worse. Her chest compressed against the rock, her legs pinned behind her. The more she struggled, the deeper she sank into the gap. Panic set in. Her breaths came fast and shallow, the pressure on her ribs making it harder to inhale. She tried to push back, but there was no leverage. Her arms were trapped at her sides. Her friends sprang into action, scrambling to help. One grabbed her hands, trying to pull her free, but the angle was all wrong. Another pushed against her feet, hoping to ease her back out, but she barely budged. They took turns, calling her name, urging her to stay calm, to keep breathing, to not give in to fear. But nothing worked. At least nothing worked to get her out of her prison. She was growing colder and colder as minutes turned into an hour. Her friends, however, were getting more and more desperate. Finally, reality sank in. They couldn't do this alone. If they kept trying, they might only make things worse. Therefore, one of them reached for their phone and dialed 911. The sheriff's deputies and search and rescue teams were mobilized, but they knew they needed specialists. The San Bernardino County Cave and Technical Rescue Team was called in. They were experts trained for the brutal realities of underground rescues. Reaching the woman, however, was no simple task. The cave itself was the first obstacle. Rescuers had to hike miles through rough terrain, carrying heavy packs of ropes, medical supplies, and specialized gear. By the time they arrived at the entrance, it was 9 p.m. They switched on their headlamps and prepared for the grueling descent into the cave. Inside, progress was painfully slow. Every piece of equipment had to be passed through by hand, relay style. But when they eventually reached her, the rescuers immediately went to work, wrapping her in blankets to fight off hypothermia first and foremost. But this was only the beginning. The hardest part was yet to come. The next challenge was figuring out how to move her without making things worse. One wrong pull could force her deeper into the gap, crush her ribs, or cut off circulation to her lower body. The rescuers took their time, analyzing every angle, every inch of space. They decided on a slow, multi-step approach. First, they needed to free her torso. Using a combination of ropes and pulleys, they carefully adjusted her position, trying to create just enough space for her to breathe more easily. But every movement had to be precise. The rock was unforgiving. The slightest mistake could trap her even further. As the hours dragged on, exhaustion set in. The cave was an unrelenting enemy. Cold, dark, and uncomfortably tight. Rescuers took turns, working in shifts to keep their focus sharp. Some crawled back to the surface to relay updates. Others stayed by the woman's side, monitoring her vitals, keeping her awake, reminding her that she would get out. The real challenge, however, came when they had to lift her out. The team rigged up a complex system of ropes, pulleys, and harnesses, securing her in place before attempting the climb. They lifted her inch by inch, maneuvering her through a series of constrictions. Every movement had to be slow and deliberate. By sunrise, they were still at it. The rescuers had worked through the night, carefully hoisting her through the treacherous tunnels. Now she was near the surface. One last maneuver, one final lift. Then, at exactly 10 a.m., after 16 hours underground, she was free. Her body was drained from the ordeal. Her skin was covered in scrapes and bruises, her limbs stiff from being locked in place for so long. Her breathing was ragged, her face pale. The team wasted no time. A CAL FIRE helicopter hovered nearby, ready to airlift her to safety. The helicopter took off, carrying her to an ambulance awaiting nearby. Medics worked quickly, treating her for exhaustion and checking for signs of deeper injuries. She was battered, but alive. Her survival was only possible because of the swift response of law enforcement, search and rescue teams, and the cave rescue specialists who risked their own safety to bring her home. Their efforts serve as a reminder that even in the most desperate situations, teamwork and preparedness can make all the difference. What do you think of this story? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this on Truly Tragic.